The Galactic Medical Council had never faced anything like this before. The plague spread across 17 star systems in just 40 standard days. It killed without mercy. It showed no preference for species, age, or status. The greatest scientists from the most advanced civilizations worked day and night, but they found nothing. Their supercomputers ran millions of simulations. Their quantum analyzers studied every molecule of the virus. Still, the plague continued its deadly march across the galaxy. Dr. Sarah was nobody special in the eyes of the galactic community. She came from Earth, a small blue planet in an unremarkable corner of the Milky Way. Humans had only joined the Galactic Union 15 years ago. They were considered primitive by most standards. Their technology was centuries behind the Empire. Their medical knowledge seemed like ancient history compared to the collective. Most alien species looked at humans with a mixture of pity and mild curiosity. They were the newcomers, the children of the galaxy who had much to learn. Sarah worked at a small clinic on Station Omega-7, a trading outpost on the edge of civilized space. She treated minor injuries and common illnesses. She helped alien traders with food poisoning and fixed broken bones for miners who worked the asteroid fields. It was quiet work, far from the glamorous research facilities of the core worlds. But Sarah loved her job. She believed every patient deserved the best care possible, regardless of their species or their ability to pay. The plague reached Station Omega-7 on a cargo ship from the system. Within hours, 12 aliens showed symptoms. Within 2 days, that number grew to 300. The station's medical facilities were overwhelmed. Sarah worked without sleep, moving from patient to patient, doing everything she could to ease their suffering. The doctors who arrived to help were puzzled by Sarah's methods. She did not rely solely on advanced scanning technology. She listened to her patients. She touched them, felt their temperatures with her own hands, and asked them questions about their lives. They found this primitive and inefficient. Their culture had abandoned such basic diagnostic methods thousands of years ago. Everything they did was calculated by artificial intelligence and by quantum computers. But Sarah noticed something the computers missed. She observed that patients who had recently eaten a particular type of food seemed to recover faster than others. It was a small detail, easy to overlook. The food was a simple grain grown on a backwater agricultural world. It had no known medicinal properties according to galactic databases. Any computer would have dismissed it as irrelevant statistical noise. Sarah did not dismiss it. She collected samples and began studying them in her tiny laboratory. The equipment she had was laughable compared to what the core world scientists possessed. Her microscope was 100 years old by galactic standards. Her chemical analyzers were considered museum pieces. But Sarah worked with what she had. She stayed awake for 72 hours, drinking coffee and studying data, following her intuition down paths that logic alone would never have found. The Galactic Medical Council announced that the plague had now infected over 2 billion beings across the galaxy. Death tolls were climbing every hour. Panic spread faster than the disease itself. Governments began closing borders. Ships were turned away from ports. Families were separated. The economy of the entire galaxy began to collapse under the weight of fear and uncertainty. Meanwhile, in her cramped laboratory, Sarah made a discovery that would change everything. The grain contained a compound that was completely unknown to galactic science. It was not listed in any database because no one had ever thought to study such a simple food source. The compound interacted with the virus in a unique way, disrupting its ability to replicate without harming the host cells. Sarah contacted the Galactic Medical Council with her findings. They ignored her at first. Why would they listen to a human doctor from a frontier station? She had no prestigious degrees from galactic universities. She published no papers in respected scientific journals. Her equipment was ancient, and her methods were considered outdated. The council had more important matters to attend to, like managing the billions of credits being spent on research by proper scientists. Sarah did not give up. She began treating patients on Station Omega-7 with a solution derived from the grain compound. The results were remarkable. Patients who had been near death began recovering within days. Their vital signs stabilized. Their immune systems, boosted by the compound, began fighting back against the virus with renewed strength. Word spread through the station. Then it spread to nearby systems. Traders and travelers carried stories of the human doctor who was saving lives with a treatment no one else had discovered. Soon, ships began arriving at Station Omega 7 from across the sector. They brought sick passengers hopping for a miracle. They brought desperate families willing to try anything. Sarah worked tirelessly, producing as much of the treatment as she could with her limited resources. She trained other medical staff to administer the cure. She shared her research openly, sending her data to anyone who would listen. She did not care about patents or profits or prestige. She cared only about saving lives. Finally, the Galactic Medical Council could no longer ignore the evidence. They sent a team of investigators to Station Omega 7. The scientists who arrived were skeptical, even dismissive. They expected to find fraud or coincidence or some simple misunderstanding. What they found instead shocked them to their core. Sarah's treatment worked. It worked better than anything their advanced technology had produced. The compound she discovered was effective against the plague with a success rate of 94%. More importantly, it was cheap and easy to manufacture. The grain grew abundantly on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Within weeks, production could be scaled to treat billions of patients. The lead scientist asked Sarah how she had found what their supercomputers had missed. Sarah's answer confused him. She explained that she had simply paid attention to her patients. She had noticed patterns that data alone could not reveal. She had trusted her instincts when the numbers told her nothing useful. They had no word in their language for this concept. They had evolved beyond intuition and gut feelings. Their society valued pure logic and mathematical precision above all else. The idea that a less advanced species could outperform them through some primitive mental process was difficult to accept. But the evidence was undeniable. Sarah's treatment was immediately approved for galactic distribution. Manufacturing facilities across 17 systems began producing the cure. Medical ships carried supplies to the hardest-hit worlds. The death rate, which had been climbing for weeks, began to fall. Hope returned to populations that had started planning for extinction. Sarah became famous overnight. News broadcasts across the galaxy showed her face and told her story. The human doctor from the frontier who had saved billions of lives. Politicians and celebrities requested meetings with her. Universities offered her honorary degrees. Corporations wanted to put her name on products and advertisements. Sarah refused almost all of it. She continued working at Station Omega 7, treating patients who needed her help. She gave interviews occasionally, always emphasizing that the real heroes were the medical staff across the galaxy who distributed the treatment. She donated the modest royalties she received to build clinics on worlds that had no proper health care. The Galactic Medical Council created a new award in her honor. They called it the Prize, given annually to the medical professional who showed the greatest compassion and creativity in treating patients. The first recipient was a young nurse who had worked alongside Sarah during the worst days of the outbreak. But the true impact of Sarah's discovery went beyond the plague itself. The galactic community began to look at humans differently. These primitive beings from the small blue planet had something valuable to offer. They possessed qualities that more advanced species had lost or never developed. They could see patterns in chaos. They could trust feelings that logical explanation. They could care for strangers with a warmth that technology could not replicate. Other human doctors and scientists were invited to join prestigious research teams across the galaxy. Human medical practices, once dismissed as outdated, became subjects of serious study. They established an entire department dedicated to understanding human intuition and its applications in scientific discovery. Sarah lived for another 60 years after the plague. She never stopped practicing medicine. Even when her body grew old and weak, she continued training young doctors from dozens of species. She taught them that medicine was not just about technology and data. It was about connection, about understanding, about seeing each patient as an individual worthy of dignity and care. When she finally passed away peacefully in her sleep, the galaxy mourned. Flags were lowered on 1,000 worlds. Ships passing through Station Omega-7 transmitted memorial signals in her honor. The Galactic Council declared a day of remembrance that continues to be observed every year. But Sarah's greatest legacy was not any award or holiday. It was the billions of lives that continued because of her work. It was the children who grew up healthy because the plague had been stopped. It was the families that remained whole, the civilizations that survived, the future that was possible because one human doctor refused to give up. The galaxy had learned something important from the plague. Advanced technology was powerful, but it was not everything. Sometimes the answers came from unexpected places. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room had the most important thing to say. And sometimes, a species that seemed primitive and insignificant could rise to save billions when the most advanced civilizations had failed. Humanity earned its place among the stars that day, not through military power or economic might, but through compassion, creativity, and the courage to trust in things that could not be measured or calculated. They proved that being young and small did not mean being useless. They showed that every species, no matter how humble its origins, had something unique and valuable to contribute to the galactic community. And in medical academies across the galaxy, students still study Sarah's methods. They learn that the best doctors are not those with the most advanced equipment or the most prestigious credentials. The best doctors are those who never forget that behind every patient is a living being deserving of hope, care, and respect. That lesson, more than any treatment or technology, was Sarah's true gift to the universe.